I did call earlier when using the phone.
Earlier, when was that?
Or later when then I left a message.
A message? What number did you call?
2, 4, 9er, 5, 6, 7, 8.
I can't hear you. You're trailing off. And did I catch a niner in there? Were you calling from a walkie-talkie?
No, it was cordless.
Mm-hmm. You know what? Don't. Not here. Not now.
Did you hear I finally graduated?
Yeah, and just a shade under a decade, too. All right.
You know, a lot of people go to college for 7 years.
I know. They're called doctors.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another week of Muskies on Tap. Coming to you live with the second episode of the year. We got Max on the line here tonight. We are missing one of the members. Brian Eckel is out for unknown but also known reasons that we may not want to say here. One is with Wi-Fi and one is something with the house. I could go into further detail, but I'm not going to. But I'll start with you, Max. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing wonderful. Glad to be here. Yeah, it's unfortunate our good pal Brian isn't able to hop on tonight, but it sounds like he's just got some issues that are a little above his pay grade. So, he's outsourcing the work. Sounds like that's just been a whole nother ordeal. A lot of excuses coming out of the Echo camp this week. So all good. We'll truck on without him. We got a fantastic guest on anyways tonight. So screw Brian, even though I love him. We'll catch him on the next episode. I'm sure he'll be back and better than ever. But Gus, why don't you just quick dive in here and introduce our guest, and we'll get this thing rolling.
Yeah. We got on here tonight Curtis Cecchi with Fox Valley Outdoors guide service, and Catch him with Cletus, where you can find him on Instagram and YouTube. I know we'll dive in way deeper into that. We're gonna have a good chat here tonight. But Curtis, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fine, gentlemen. I'm doing just fine. Thank you for having me on the pod. Happy to be here. Am I the first multi-species guy you guys have had on here that's not strictly musky, or?
There's a good chance. We've had a few guides. We've had a few YouTubers. Man, off the top of my head, I think so, because I know you do a ton of multi-species trips. You're not strictly musky, but I did get to go musky fishing with you once this late fall, which we can probably touch on here later. And no, I think the first multi-species.
Well, thanks for having me on Muskies on Tap, guys. Again, so got my bush latte with me, so we got a beer and ready to talk some fishing, gentlemen.
That's awesome. So before we hopped on, we were just kind of chatting offline here. I was kind of interested about your setup and kind of how we started following each other. I think I mentioned to you, your guide page kind of came across our Muskies on Tap feed, and I told Gus, I was like, God, this guy's freaking hilarious. I'm like, you got to reach out to him. He's up in Presque Isle. He's in our neck of the woods. He's doing a bunch of cool stuff. So if you can kind of give the people a little bit of a description on your setup, what you're running out of Presque Isle. I know you're a guide up there, but just kind of give the people a little flavor on, where you're living, what you're doing. A little background would be awesome.
All right. Yeah, sure. I run Fox Valley Outdoors guide service out of Sunrise Resort in Presque Isle, Wisconsin. So right now, more or less full-time guide, part-time property manager. So I run just as of, I guess last year now, because we're already into 2024. I run a Lund 1810 Predator multi-species guide. I do have to admit I am a transplant from Illinois, but got a little bit of everywhere in me. Before, I was a fishing guide. I was really actually a big bass guy. Fished ISHA, high school derbies, fished for the University of South Carolina bass fishing team, 2014 to 2018. And then after college, I did a stint as a fisheries observer up in Alaska as a Pacific groundfish observer. I do hold a bachelor's of science degree in biological sciences with a minor in statistics, unofficial emphasis in botany and ichthyology. So I could roll out the credentials. But anyways, like I'm just I'm just a guy that really just loves to fish. And luckily I was able to find a way to turn my passion into, a living, or at least working that way. So that's kind of the project right now, but kind of the main focus is putting people on fish and trying to maybe do some YouTube stuff to try and bring some people along. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. So
how the hell did you end up in Presque Isle, Wisconsin after that long road to get there?
Sometimes I ask myself that on a very regular basis. Honestly, I pinch myself, at least once a week. But long story short, was kind of finishing up my career as a fisheries observer. It's kind of a short-term thing. It's kind of a hard career path. A lot of people take it as like breaks in between undergrad and graduate. You're living above on ships in Alaska and stuff like that. And I was kind of in a transition period, finished, my last contract, probably almost a year before I came up here. But to be completely honest, I came up here to insulate a garage. And at the Sunrise, through a friend of mine who him. So and
have
his
you
dad
ever been up in Presque Isle prior to that?
No. I lived in Northern Illinois my entire life. I fell out of the sky, quite literally, and the resort owner. I just came up to work. Resort owner Scott Barrett lent me a boat. Went out on the lake here behind the resort and had a heck of a day, early season walleye. And, I just got this funny feeling like, I don't think I want to leave. And so, got to talking with him about, working up here and, cause it was kind of seemed like, he could use some help around this place. And, kind of slowly parlayed that into, me kind of being on, living on premises, making sure things go around here and, managing it and, and making time to guide and learn the waters up here. So, it gave me the flexibility to really start pouring, all my time, or maybe not all my time, it's hard to say that, but a larger portion of my time into fishing. And to be completely honest with you guys, 2020 is when I got up here, and I really wasn't much of a musky fisherman prior to that. And I can tell you I've come a long way in 4 years of condensed a lot of that struggle into a short period of time. But I'm sure every angler can commiserate. I think I would say 2020 I dabbled. 21 I realized that I was kind of in the mecca of musky fishing, at least in the lower 48 or the U.S. And it was a big dollar fish. As far as the guiding goes, that's what destination wise, people come here to musky fish. We have great smallmouth, we have great walleye, but people come here to musky fish. So I took it upon myself to to really try and pursue, learn the fish. And I think it took me 2021. I think I only caught 1 or 2 fish. And believe you me, I put the time in to try and learn it. And fast forward to this season, I mean, I don't know what the exact count is, but probably between guiding and what I caught personally, probably somewhere in the 30 plus range of fish, and I'm dabbling in other stuff too. It's caught some really nice fish this year. So I guess I'm not trying to get on here and pat myself on the back too hard, but taking time to learn this fish has been incredibly humbling and a struggle that has been, worthwhile.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Vilas County will make a musky fisherman out of anybody. It's just too many
It's
options
just
up
gonna
here to
grab you,
ignore.
just pull you in. It did for myself as well. And yeah, we all come from somewhere, and man, yeah, musky fishing. Once those little like things click, at least that I've found out, there's gonna be like little things that click, and all of a sudden it's just gonna make more sense, and it's gonna be bing bang boom. You're gonna learn more lakes. I know when we fished that one day, you took me to a new lake that I've never been to, one of your home waters, and you knew right where to go. We were on them right away. So, as we just heard before, you're a well-rounded athlete. I like to call us fishermen athletes here. You got the background of the degree, all the species, which I think we'll probably might as well just dive in right now. So you said bass was like the first thing you kind of did. You did all those tournaments. Any correlation that you see with bass? I know you said smallmouth fishing is probably what you mainly do up here. Do you see any correlation up here with spots or anything like that, or anything you got on that?
Uh, yeah. I mean, I think as a multi-species guy, I think there's something you can cross-pollinate from any species. I mean, where there are fish, there's going to be essentially bigger fish. A lot of time taken figuring out spots, breaking down high probability areas. It seems like there is some overlap because kind of muskie are the top of the food chain, and there's some techniques that I brought from kind of bass fishing and some ideas that have correlated. I mean, like deep cranking at like a bite, like some of these bite that I got into kind of midsummer was something that we did down in the south for largemouth. Was finding offshore cribs, brush piles, stuff like that, and doing deep cranks down in them. And I got a couple fish this year doing that. But and to be completely honest, there's in some instances where I will imitate bass. I mean, I know that even on Presque Isle, there are muskie that in the spring push a smallmouth. There's muskie right behind them. I mean, they're cruising around beds. I have a piece of footage that I have yet to release, but kind of we're messing. I say the smallmouth's life to kind of preface the story, but yeah. So
Lucky
whatever.
Smalley.
We were kind of lucky Smalley. No, but I do die. I also I like to get in the water too and swim with fish. I'm a total nerd in that regard, but. So we were doing some filming of the smallmouth on a bed. We fed it a night crawler, carried it off the bed, and I'm following the smallmouth, and out of the murk behind is like mid 40s muskie super tanker, and I just see her, and she just dialed on this smallmouth, like you can see her locked in, and then she notices me and is like changes her attention to, oh, this guy's like down here, and she just kind of cruises off, and I ended up swimming. I held my breath as long as I could, but ended up, swimming several yards with her. And it was a really cool experience and kind of, eye-opening. So they're going to be feeding on bedding smallies and stuff like that. And, when there's some areas where when smallmouth are kind of pushing in pre-spawn, but, just before, I mean, it kind of, there's not much of an overlap in like the, because of the opener, you can't really fish for them, but they're there, and I'll catch them on smallmouth baits early in the spring. So, trying to, relate, muskie to these other fish movements, it's kind of been something that I didn't really, at first, like when I first dove into muskie fishing, I kind of was like blank slate, I'm trying to learn this thing and, casting my butt off and not really seeing much. And, it took me a little while to kind of just sit back and be like, all right, dude, it's fishing. You just need to fish, and, all of that information that you've learned, fishing bass, and then coming into doing more walleye stuff. There's a lot of again, I'll use the word, cross pollination, because those fish are going to, more or less, it's not to a T, because muskie feed on, everything. but there's going to be fish that, I'm a firm believer there's smallmouth eaters, there's walleye eaters, there's Cisco fish, there's, walleye, fish that are all going to be, on their different forage or perch. So, where there's little fish, there's going to be big fish without rambling too much on that point.
No, that all makes sense. I definitely have heard, if you can become a good angler, chasing the smaller species, you're actually going to just almost stumble across musky knowledge. Obviously because you're trying to go after the bait that they're eating, and finding out where they stage at certain points in the year can be, really valuable information. But something I wanted to ask you about, because, when you were kind of breaking down your chronological, order here of your musky career, it seems like a lot of your exploratory years, called from 2020 to present date, we're kind of around the same time that Gus and I started really branching out from just fishing, the Eagle River chain where we grew up fishing for muskies. So I wanted to ask you, you're not new to the area, but like you said, you kind of fell from the sky, you get dropped into Presque Isle, you're looking at a lake, all the lake maps in Vilas County, and the resort's on Presque Isle Lake, but you're talking about going and fishing all these different bodies of water. So, when that started, how are you identifying what could be a good musky lake? Are you chasing rumors that you've heard at the resort bar? Are you actually just kind of, looking at maybe some stocking reports and just going out and trying a new body of water that day? And then part two to the question would be, once you actually get out there, like, what are some of the stuff? Because, you're looking for, we hear a lot of people ask, how do you break down new water? So I'd be curious to hear it from your perspective, with all this background of multi-species. You're going out to chase muskies on a new body of water one day. A, how'd you decide to pick that lake? And then B, how do you kind of tackle it?
So yeah, honestly, you kind of hit the nail on the head with kind of the resort bar thing. So, all of the above really is the answer. Gathering information from old timers. There's, been some people that have definitely helped me along, my way, talking to people, in town, getting to know locals, fishing with, some of the, even some of the old guides to kind of help get like the first pieces of the puzzle. Because with any new fish or new body of water or new region, putting the first few pieces of the puzzle together is the hardest. But once you can kind of get that small picture, the bigger picture kind of starts to fall into place. So, and then having those experiences too that, kind of give you that confidence, like, going and throwing at, a rock pile or a point, or, really getting dialed into a weed edge. Cause, you hear, you get on YouTube, and hear what people have to say there. We have all of these resources. I mean, what a time to be a young angler, or just an up and coming, person in any realm of fishing. We have so much resources, but like, the kind of the hardest part is to put that in the action long enough until you actually see some reciprocation. You start moving fish, or you get a bite, whatever. But kind of the lake breakdown is kind of similar. If it's I usually break down. I mean, I keep it pretty simple. It's a couple different lakes. You either have kind of like a rock wood kind of lake, or you have, in my mind, you have your grass lakes, because I try to keep things simple. You could go on varying water clarities and whatever, and then something that I kind of pulled from bass fishing is like, what's the scarcest type of cover on the lake? Like if it's a grass lake and I happen to stumble upon a rock pile, or I'm looking at a map and I see kind of like a flat spot next to a break, like I want to go check that out, because that to me might mean that there's some hard bottom there, in an otherwise soft lake. Just the things that any bass, walleye, musky angler is going to do to kind of try and find those high percentage spots. And really talking to some of the pro bass guys, it's like, how do how do you get on fish? How do you stay on fish consistently? Well, the answer to that question is to burn gas. Use your electronics, graph. It's you can learn so much if you have side scan, even if you have down imaging 2D. Gus, you want to say something there to that?
No, sorry, go ahead. I just lost my train of thought. Shit.
Oh, good.
I had something there, kind of.
Yeah, but and now with like forward facing sonar, you have a lot of tools to kind of get a head start in breaking things down, but really that doesn't, to me, it takes time, because until you again get that kind of, I guess for lack of a better term, reciprocation, like you put all this time and energy and then the fish reciprocate with showing you that they're there or getting a bite. And every time you move a fish and every time you get a bite, especially for me, is like what I learned musky fishing, like every single fish, you are just a little bit better after every single fish, after every fish that you move, you are just a skosh better of a musky angler, because you just have that much confidence. Because that's the crazy thing about musky fishing is, you find these really good spots. Like I've found some incredible spots up here and that have been fish producers for me. But, you can go back, you just happen to hit that right day. You'll go back to that spot 5 more times and you won't see a damn thing. And then, the next time you go, everything's lined up and you're going to move like 3 fish in like a half hour, and that's kind of the crazy thing, because you can, yes, we try and increase probability, fishing prefrontal, fishing around moon phases, and, your minors and your majors. And that's something that I didn't really do prior to musky angling. That's not something that bass guys ever really pay attention to or talk about, but like that, it's honestly, it's almost like magic, in a way, like, you don't believe it at first. And then you get, you finally, get enough confidence and like patterning around a major, or like, one of, my favorites is a pre-moonrise minor. I mean, you want to talk about one of my favorite times to be on the water, when that's correlating to a couple other things. I mean, that's when I've had a lot of success. But again, just time on the water. That's one thing that has, gotten me as, far as I have in the past 4 years, why I would take anybody out musky fishing with confidence is, I have, unlike, a lot of people, whatever, I might have just fallen out of the sky, but, call it a blessing or a curse. I've probably put as much time on the water as a lot of people that have like lived here a lot, because, they haven't had the time they're working, they're doing other things. That's not their main focus. In 3 years as a musky angler, yes, it's only 3 years, but in, the standard time scale, but, really been blessed with the opportunity to be able to pour as much time into the sport as I have. And, I guess, it kind of, I don't know, it gives me a unique perspective, because it kind of gives me a little bit of clarity, but it also is like, I know nothing.
It's a clean slate for you,
Yeah, right. So I guess I'd like to, kind of start with like, the anecdote. It's like the first muskie, like the first good fish, the first time I broke 40, kind of, classic situation. We did some working for this. Like we literally pulled a boat over Beaver Dam to get to this spot. Like this has been grinding all summer for a fish and still haven't got it. And, out at the end of the cast, over, 10-foot weed bed, muskie crushes a bucktail, like absolutely hammers it. And that fish right there, like, before I had the itch, that gave me the bug, but that also gave me, kind of that first piece of the puzzle, my first like real confidence, kind of go to. I mean, yeah, whatever bucktail, I'll even tell you, it's, black marabou, double eight. I'm sure there's a lot of people
classic.
that is a, that is a weapon of mass destruction, that, I think, it's up there with like the Senko for bass fishing, if, wacky worm, a Senko. I mean, black, double eight marabou bucktail is about, darn near as close as it gets. And I've caught a lot of fish on one of those. But that, again, just kind of reiterating that, that was the kind of one of the first pieces of the puzzle that I really got. And, trying to build it out from there. So.
Right. I mean, I think that for the listeners here that are either beginners or, experts, to the sense that they're, been doing it for a long time, you can see the passion of the sport, like what it can do to us and like what goes through our mind. I mean, all the stuff that you're describing is, we think about a lot. I feel like us as musky anglers, we're really analytical. We really like put a lot of things through our mind per day, how we're breaking down new water, and it's definitely good to like simplify it. But, in a realistic sense, that's just stuff that's going through my mind when I'm on the water solo, even as much as I'm with Max or, some other buddies or with clients. My head usually is, if nothing's clicking that day, it's like racing. Like, all right, what the hell are we supposed to do next? Like, what's going on? And I was going to bring up a point with the looking at new waters. You're talking about, 2D side scan, looking for cribs, rocks, muck, weeds, all that stuff is one thing I was going to add there. And I think Max can agree, especially with tournament fishing too, because usually you look for raising fish and pre-fishing and all that. But usually a spot that looks really, really good to you on paper and on your sonar is, I would say, 10 out of 10 times a good spot. Always. And like you said, maybe 3 times you're not going to see a fish, and that's the tough. Well, you got something there, Max?
This is just our favorite shark fin spot at Vermilion.
Nah, we'll get a fish there one year. Don't you worry. Don't you worry.
Best looking spot I've ever seen in the entire world, and we never raised a fish on it in 4 days. But
fished it all the time and fished.
I'm sure you're correct. I'm sure that there has been a muskie on that spot at one point in time in the history of the world.
Yeah,
and that's it. But
sorry.
I totally agree with 10 out of 10 times the fish is going to be there. It's a good spot. It's a good spot, and that's the what I was trying to get at with muskie fishing is like, with bass or walleye or panfish or almost any other species, it looks good. You're there the right time of the year. You're at least going to get a tap. You might catch a small fish at the very least. And I'll tell you that, all right, there's fish that use this, but maybe this isn't the time of the year when the quality is in that spot.
Right.
With muskie, they're coming and going. They might just turn their nose up at it. I mean, there could be 2, 3 sitting down there on that spot, and they could just not be in the mood, which is really what makes the fish so rewarding. Is you can do everything right. You can do all your homework. You can put the bait in the right spot, damn near be there at the right time, or maybe not the right time, and that's what it comes down to. Is you have to almost be relentless and fish that spot, having the confidence and building that confidence to be like, looks good on the map, I went and I graphed it looks good, it's there's a lake up here and it has one of the best textbook musky spots that I know that's within an hour of me. I mean, rock hump, cabbage are all, almost 360 degrees around it. There's a saddle to an island. It dumps in a freaking like 40 plus feet of water. And I think I fished that spot like 3 or 4 times before I finally got pulled a fish off of it. Several trips. But I knew there was going to be a muskie there. Like
Yeah.
there's no way there wasn't, a fish going to be on there. But, I think that's something that's hard for guys that don't get a lot of time on the water. They they
Picks
lose
the
that
right angle.
confidence. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, right. The right angle. You get your protractor
Yeah.
out. I mean, and if you're other guys that come on the pod and just, even some musky anglers that I've talked about, it's a good spot. Sit there and chuck. I mean, until your freaking arm falls off. Rotate it throughout the day. I can't tell you, even in bass fishing tournaments, that the fish are on this shoreline. You might get 2 or 3 windows a day. I've bet entire 8-hour tournaments on 100-yard stretches of shoreline because I know there's quality there. Are they feeding?
Mhm.
Are they pushing up throughout a day? Whatever. How long you stick to your guns in a tournament. You add the whole tournament aspect in musky fishing. I mean, it's your achievement this year with the Top Gun is something I salute you, sir, for that. But
Thank you.
adding that the additional pressure and you're questioning yourself, can really become very intrusive to kind of how your day's gonna go. I mean, and that's one of the things that I think that really helped me as a muskie, getting into the muskie game is kind of things that I took away from tournament bass fishing is, sometimes you gotta, stick to your guns, what works, don't get spun out, and, grab on. Sometimes you got to grab onto what and hold on tight instead of ripping open the tackle box and throwing everything in the kitchen sink at them, even though I've definitely gotten off the water with a deck covered in hooks.
Those are always the worst days.
We've been there.
Yeah.
Usually amounts to the least amount of fish caught. Those days.
I want to touch on something you said because I think it's a great point, and that's looking at a spot and feeling confident. Okay, yeah, there's fish here, but what you said is like I think pretty. It clicks with me because it's like okay, it's a great spot, but they just might not be there at this time on this day, and that's why you continue to revisit spots that you think or feel like are good, even if you haven't pulled a fish off of them before, because you gotta at some point in time, like it's always a leap of faith to go fish a new lake or a new spot or whatever. And if you feel it, down in your plums that it's a good spot, you're going to continue to revisit that until, you eventually pull something off of it. And then I think there's like another layer to it. If you peel back the onion a little bit, it's not only like, okay, is it a good spot this day and are there fish circulating? But then you start to get, like Gus was saying, a little more analytical. And it's like, all right, what time of year are fish going to be using this piece of structure more often than, maybe you're fishing a spot in August. And there's so many times Gus and I will be on a body of water and say, like, when we're back here and post turnover in October, like we're coming here, and that's like, I think where we've been able to maybe up our game a little bit is, apply whatever that seasonality is to a certain spot. If it's you're fishing a weed edge and all of a sudden on your side scan, you look off to the right and there's like 6 cribs littered around and they're on the secondary break. And then there's a third break that dumps into, like you were saying, 40 feet or 50 feet or whatever. You're kind of looking at that going, all right, maybe that's not great right now. You could try it out maybe in August, but I want to come back in October and fish this. And you start to build that Rolodex of spots, over and over. And that's what you're talking about with time on the water is like, eventually, you start to just you build this book of knowledge on these different spots up in Vilas County that can make you just kind of a weapon of a musky angler, which I think is really cool. But I want to revert back a little bit what you said when you're talking about trying to find new water and you're chasing, sometimes chasing some bar tails from the resort. What are some of those conversations like with some of the old timers that you listen to that maybe had been fishing in Vilas since the 70s or 80s? Have you heard any crazy stories from those guys on the back in my day type stuff? Or
Hooking
I
them
guess
up.
any of that comes to mind.
One guy that honestly, I would suggest I might have to try and get him. I don't know if you do this, but kind of a legend in Presque Isle, guy by the name of Forbes Taylor, and he is probably one of the most infamous musky anglers that nobody has ever heard of. Guided here for many years, and he has many a good tale and has tipped me off to quite a few things. One good one was, a 50-incher under the 4th of July fireworks out on the bar behind the resort. Yeah.
No shit.
Long time ago,
Behind the where? Should I bleep that out?
yeah, right. Yeah. Well, yeah. Hey, I've fished it a lot, guys. So you can go there and pound it all you want. I'll wave at you from the porch and ask you if you caught anything.
If you're gonna fish that bar, at least give Curtis a wave while you're going by.
Yeah, at least give me a wave. I don't know if that fish lived there. That was a long time ago, but shenanigans that maybe catching bait and other things. Trying to think of some good ones. Put me on the spot.
Here, real quick, I'll give you a chance to think. Gus, you got to tell your 4th of July muskie story. And I'm really pissed now Brian's not here.
Was it just me, Brian, and our buddy Jack?
No, it was me.
Which one are you talking
and
about?
Brian. It was when you caught the muskie, right when that guy started playing.
That one's fun. I have two. Then I have two.
Okay.
There's two. One involves catching a fish. One does not involve catching a fish. I'll tell the one with the fish first. That one, Max and I were out with Brian and somebody. We're fishing not really a spot we usually do. It was just some junk, shallow weeds, and we're just kind of dinking around before. We had a group coming up that week, 4th of July, right? Like it was just us prior. So we had a big group. So we were just able to fish for a little bit that night, and there's a big storm coming. So, things were lining up. I don't think we were fishing super hard, but the saxophone
fishing.
yeah. Casual fishing. And this guy walks out in his dock with a saxophone and starts just playing like the national anthem. Yamming super loud. I mean, it was like a very nice, calm pre-storm night on we're fishing the chain where normally it's just buzzing around the 4th of July, and it was just not much going on. And then this dude decides to play the sax right in front of us, and
we were getting serenaded while we were musky fishing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I think on like his third or fourth song, he plays. Doesn't he play like Ave Maria or something like that?
Yeah. It was some
one of extremely well-known song that almost everybody in the world should recognize. And what does Brian say? Does he?
No, it wasn't even the song. He just goes, "What instrument do you guys think he's playing?"
It's clear as a bell, a saxophone. Like even somebody who never went to band class or never listened to a song is like, "Oh yeah, that's a saxophone." He straight up with a straight face, he's like, "What instrument do you guys think that is?" It's like, dude.
And then you caught a nice muskie right when the the chorus.
Yeah.
You're like, "Oh, this is pretty cool."
Yep.
I haven't heard the one where you didn't catch a fish on the 4th of July though.
We were well, I can't say it was on the 4th of July, but I know it was a July night on the weekend. And we were fishing near a launch on a lake, me, Brian, our buddy Jack, and we were gonna fish, into past sunset, and then all of a sudden commotion out of this house near the launch. People start walking outside and stuff, and they start blurting around things, and I think they're just one of those families that doesn't realize that sound travels on the water pretty good. Almost to the point where it's like they're talking right next to us. And they're like, "Oh, we're going to light off fireworks, blah, blah, blah." It's July. So it's like almost 10 p.m. and it's, still light out. And And we're looking at each other like there's no way they're gonna come out here and light off fireworks. I mean, this is like a cast and a half length away from us. There's like no way they're just gonna come. They can see us. We have our lights on. Like, there's no way they don't see us. And I think somebody standing there, I don't have the exact quote. I could maybe ask Brian or Jack later, but they're like, somebody's like, "Oh, there's a fishing boat right there." Somebody finally points it out, and someone's like, "Oh, who cares? They shouldn't be here anyways, fishing. Let's just light them up anyways." And we're sitting there casting, just just lighting shit off. And we're like, "All right, time to go. This sucks." We didn't say a word.
Hey,
But,
that's
we
their
heard 'em clear as
God-given
day.
American right.
Yeah, they shouldn't be here. God damn it, I'm lighting these fireworks off no matter what. They're catching all our musky. I don't know. It was pretty funny. We were like, that's just a sign.
Yeah.
That stunk.
It's not, yeah, I got a good, relatively good one for you. So, me and a couple buddies out. My buddy, Reed Cochin, who just graduated Stevens Point. He comes up and helps out at the resort. We're fishing with him. He's a hell of a bass angler. Then, one of my old, fishing buddies from down in Illinois was up, and me and him have been fishing buddies since we were kids. He's not very not as very not I guess you really couldn't call him a serious angler, but he's probably got one of the most. I don't think he has a gold horseshoe, but he's got a platinum horseshoe hidden somewhere. Because that kid. I think maybe I think in the 3 years of him coming up to visit me, I think there's one weekend where he didn't catch a muskie. Which is saying something.
Impressive.
I believe
Very
it or
impressive.
not, but but there is a small tidbit. Casey's just having fun, man. That kid just catches fish because he's having fun. That's an important tidbit, guys, for y'all listening. Just have fun with it, and you will catch fish. And believe in yourself. And it will catch fish, because that's the only reason I can understand how Casey is so consistent. But anyway, so we're all in the boat and fishing whatever Lake X, of course, because we don't need everybody load in there. Reed, bass guy, we're all musky fish. Reed catches a 46 in the first 20 minutes. 20 minutes later, Casey catches a 40, and then I cast my butt off for 8 hours and no more fish, and I'm ready to call it. I'm kind of peeved, and honestly I'm ready to hang in the towel. The pile of baits is on the deck, and I'm just kind of like, I'm gonna be the one that doesn't get to catch one today. I'm like, we need the hat trick for the boat or whatever. And of course, Casey, being happy go lucky as he is, he's like, dude, you got to keep going. You're gonna catch one here soon. So I pick up the dumbest thing, Megabass crankbait, like one of the big Megabass crankbaits. I think it was like one of the last lures that has been wet in the box. Start chucking that thing, kind of deep break, just lots of speed changes, and ended up connecting with a really nice tiger muskie, and changed the whole mood. So after 8-hour grind, finally connected. It wasn't a big fish, but it was like the relief after a long day of fishing, and that kept us out on the water just a little bit longer than we were going to be out there. And this might give away the lake, but we're rolling back in and to the launch to head out. And again, this is actually ironically around 4th of July again, and there's pontoon boats everywhere. I've never seen this lake this busy. There's probably 30 boats out in the middle of this lake. I'm like, what the heck's going on? So guys cruising out there, pulling up to them and asking what's going on. And it says the neighbor's putting on a fireworks show. And so, we get out there middle of the lake and we're waiting on it, and we get, treated to probably one of the best private fireworks shows I've ever seen. So I have positive, fireworks and muskie. I think you might want to look at it a little bit differently, because I think
I might have to.
there's some good luck there, dude. They weren't going off when we were catching fish, but But
You
again,
weren't,
going back to Forbes' story, right underneath the fireworks, he caught
Yeah.
caught a freaking 50.
I
I
might need to like the scheduled fireworks shows, not the people running out to their docks and be like, oh, there's a musky fisherman out there. Screw him.
Yeah,
I think,
shooting like Roman candles at you or something,
Oh God.
bottle rockets into the water or something. That might change things, but
I think what we're learning here is that muskies are very patriotic, which is fantastic. Seems like they
Hell
really
yeah.
gravitate towards America's birthday, which is you weren't on Cranberry Lake now watching the old Coleman private fireworks show, now were you?
no, I was not. Thankfully, there's other private fireworks shows around, so that wasn't
one's
a
got
total
more
dead
than-
giveaway.
That one's got more than 30 boats, I would have to say.
Yeah,
That one on a given
Yeah.
year is 100 plus. It's nuts.
no, but
All right. Well, I want to pivot real quick and chat with you about this YouTube channel you're building, Catch 'em with Cletus, because I have tuned into definitely all your musky videos. I don't know if I've dabbled with the other ones quite yet, but I definitely am going to, because I found myself laughing very hard at your musky videos. I don't know if that's what your goal is, and I think some of the humor is like it's not like your traditional crack a joke and knee slap type shit. It's just funny stuff. And one specific thing that I was just dying laughing that I actually texted Gus about was, and I got to hear it from your point of view, is you released a video, you're out fishing real late this year with a buddy of yours, and I think again, I want to hear it from your perspective, but I would imagine you were trying to get a sucker fish on your drone, and you're having a real hard time keeping the drone where you wanted it to be. And if anyone knows anything about sucker fishing, like there's some high stress moments between when that fish grabs the bait and when you set the hook, and it's always this game of like, should I do it, should I not? And it's really it's much more difficult if you have some external distractions going on, aka your very expensive drone deciding to fly what seemed like a very far distance the wrong way, and you're just screaming at this drone to come
Fly
home.
home.
Fly home.
I mean, that was like Murphy's Law. I mean, it was unbelievable. Like, one of the, I don't know, anybody that's dabbled in like videography or try to get drones, and like, you have a limited battery life in the drone, and, to try and capture that shot, it wasn't even intentional. Like, I was just flying around getting some B-roll or whatever, and we're bringing that thing into land, and Kurt also, ironically, we're both Kurt, but Kurt's up on the front deck about to make the catch, and or makes the catch rather, and yeah, that thing just, I'm like, he had it in his hands. I'm like, bobber down, and it's like time to go on this fish, and it's just like, attention, like you're saying, and it's like mine's going at a mile a minute, because it's like it's my turn to set the hook too, and I'm like, so like you can autopilot those drones and everything. I'm like, it's my turn to set the hook. I got to get this thing on the ground, but it's like, because I wanted to, get that thing up there, and because you can actually have it active track your position, so the drone will go on autopilot. But totally, like, I don't know what happened. Have never had it before or since, where it just decided, like, whatever happened when Kurt grabbed it, it's like didn't like that. It's like it's going home. So what happened is like, so when he let go of the drone, it went to a return to like home sequence, which is like when it loses connection or whatever, it's automated to go to this spot and land. So I'm trying to cancel the function. It's not canceling the function. The bobber is gone, and like, you can't see it from that perspective in the video, but that board is like gone and then goes under, like everything's underwater. And Yeah, that was
Screaming at the
that was not my best moment of composure. And when I was sitting there editing it, I'm like, am I really gonna put myself on the internet, like
Yes.
losing my shit? I'm like, you know what, this is
Brave
what
for
the people
that.
want. This is like this is
Brave
what the
for
That's
people
what I wanted. Hell
this
yeah.
is
I was
this is what the
dying
people
laughing.
want. Like, you know, and that's you know, kind of go to the channel. Like that's I like to entertain. Like, you know, there's so many, you know, to try and find my niche. I mean, as a multi-species guy, like I can't, you know, as I was thinking about, you know, because I've been deliberating on how to go about this channel for honestly quite some time. But you know, as a multi-species guy, I can do some of the like the how-to, the tips and stuff like that, but you know, without kind of being in a defined little niche of like walleye or musky or bass or whatever, you know, it's very hard to kind of gather a following behind, you know, that those specifics. So
Makes sense.
to try and, you know, or I would say it's impossible, but it's harder to. But you know, everybody can kind of, you know, kind of get behind like the entertaining thing. So like I would call like those two musky videos were probably some of, you know, a little bit more of the core, or you know, something more like that. I mean, obviously the tournament, the prior one wasn't as humorous, but I definitely want to bring some more of that realness and humor, and you know, I want some of those, you know, some of those videos to be really entertaining, and kind of doing it candidly, because that, like, to be completely honest, like I just brought the cameras along and rolled them, and what happened was what happened, and the shots came together and caught some really cool stuff on camera, and you know, was really cool to be able to share that with everybody and to hear feedback from you guys is, you know, that's what I want to hear. Is I hope that there's some, you know, laughs along the way. Maybe, you know, you can learn a few things and, you know, entertain. Some of the, you know, the videos that I got, you know, coming down the pipe are kind of talking a little bit more about, you know, kind of, you know, conservation, but you know, again, you know, my channel is definitely gonna be a little bit all over the place, because I mean, a multi-species angler, I've definitely got a little bit of ADHD. I am kind of a little bit all over the place, but that's kind of how I like my life, kind of lived in and, you know, all over the place, you know, because I mean, I love muskie, I love bass, I love walleye, stream trout, you know, salmon. I mean, you know, a variety is the spice of life, and I like life well seasoned. So, you know, and that's probably what's gonna, you know, the channel is gonna kind of develop into. You know, we're gonna to kind of go back more on the conservation kind of thing topic. I'm actually gonna be given a seminar at the Wisconsin Fishing Expo in Madison. Going to be talking in a little bit about, you know, kind of fisheries management, what anglers can do out, you know, within the bounds of what the DNR regulations have set forth, and kind of talk about, you know, some of those things, you know, because, you know, obviously we know, being residents of, you know, northern Wisconsin, you know, we don't have, like, you know, the necessarily maybe the enforcement that, you know, even Canada has, you know, limitations in like the, you know, the studies and stuff like that. Gus shared with me a good video of that study that was done on the Manitouish chain. And that was a great study, very insightful, but it wasn't even really directly state funded. It was state sanctioned, but this was just this guy's graduate project.
Right.
So, but without getting too far down that rabbit hole, but you know, I guess,
Well, we
you know,
can. I mean, I'd be curious to hear from your perspective on, you know, different things. I'm playing a little bit outside of my comfort zone talking about that stuff just because I'm not as well versed, you know, as somebody like yourself or you and Gus, honestly, that understands that as much. But I think, you know, having a platform where people listen, it's a good thing to probably chat about a little bit, you know. So if you do have different things that are, Gus, if you want to kind of finish the question, go for it. Okay. Well, so I guess my thing would be just be like, if there are, you know, certain areas of conservation that you could maybe touch on that you've looked into or whatever that could make people a little bit more, I guess, just understanding of what's going on, that'd be great to hear about.
Well, I guess without going into, I would consider some of those finer details, but just to kind of talk on the kind of the overarching theme is, trying to go a step deeper into encouraging people to be better stewards of their own fisheries, and I think it's come a long way in in varying degrees in the different tribes of fishermen, musky anglers being, kind of at, the one of the highest levels of conservation minded. It's probably you guys and trout fishermen, you very limited harvest of fish. And let me specify fly fishermen that fish for trout. Catch and release, the amount of attention that goes into the care of the fish. I mean, I think in the video that you mentioned earlier, like the fish that I caught in that video, I briefly, he slipped and I dropped it. I think I put in the captions, I was like, please don't hate me, because guys will take that seriously. I mean, you get into forums and, you hold a fish wrong and those people will eat you alive. And
Yeah.
So which like, I
Facebook.
but they care. Yeah. But some of these people are trolls, but some of these people care. But going into, but talking on, things like that, fish care, but trying to take that to other areas of angling, encouraging people to kind of, individual anglers to kind of participate in the science. A great conversation that's kind of happening right now, that some people have picked up on. So, and that I've kind of been working on a little bit, some project videos on, is Angling Buzz released they kind of did a study with the Minnesota DNR, a study where they were kind of looking into barotrauma and crappie. And they set up this design, and as a scientist, like when I first watched it, I'm like, that's sound. I'm like, well, holy crap, yeah, we're probably killing a lot of these crappie. And then Aaron Wiebe, Uncut Angling, picks up the story and does this whole thing to debunk it. And he, like, as a statistician, did a great job picking out the bias that I didn't even initially catch. Right. And really did a good job of adding to that conversation, and seeing things more like that, like Angling Buzz, the Linders guys, they actually got fisheries biologists to come and participate, and there were still holes in their study. And then you have Aaron Wiebe, who's up in Canada doing what Aaron does, jumping into the conversation. Full disclosure, he doesn't have any biology background, and he's like, look, this is what we can do. Like, I'm seeing these fish return to the bottom. Yes, we can't do any long-term studies. He's pointing out where his bias of his interpretation of what he did could, give misleading data. But, we can, encouraging personally, everybody can kind of participate in the scientific discussion. And as anglers, we're on the water every day. I just happen to be one of the, I don't want to call myself rare, not, kind of be condescending, but it's like, I have a unique perspective because, I have the formal training and expertise, as well as I spend a lot of time chasing this fish. I'm just purely on the water, chasing fish. I'm under the water, swimming with them. Like I call it developing my intuition as a biologist, but, anybody can kind of take the scientific method and kind of contribute what they can. So I think that's an interesting kind of potential, because it can be grassroots. The DNR kind of sets the bounds. I mean, one topic that's kind of near and dear to my heart, and I think affects the musky world, at least up here, is in Vilas County, is that we have an incredibly high limit on a lot of lakes on panfish. Guys can go in there, take 25 a man. I don't know if the possession is 25 or 50, but that's a lot of fish. Some of these lakes can't handle it, and that's the base of your food chain. Now, if you look at the literature, the DNR claims that that's a sustainable amount of panfish. Intuitively, you go into some of these smaller lakes that might have had a ton of trophy bluegill or crappie in them. Guys can go in there and wipe them out. I mean, in a weekend, or keep going through and, really do some damage. Some fisheries can handle it. Like, there's a lake by me that has an incredible amount of walleye in it, and it's amazing that that fishery can sustain the harvest that I know that it gets. But every lake is different, and to properly manage the Northwoods, where we have such a high diversity of lakes, there's no lake that's any different. And I think that's, to kind of get back to the fishing side of things, I think that's really why I love this place so much, is because, well, one lake is at this point in the season, another lake's on this point of the season. So we'll go to an example of bass. I love pre-spawn smallies. One of my favorite things to fish for, like May, June, I got a bass rod in my hand, and just looking for big footballs, pushing up and going from lake to lake. I've got a milk run of lakes up here that I can hop to, that from week to week, I'm changing lakes, but all those fish are in the same spot in the pre-spawn. Mm-hmm. So I'm essentially, just by changing lakes, I'm almost freezing time, if you will, or somewhat. So, with that degree of diversity in lakes, having, all encompassing, or let's just call them general regulations from the DNR, might not be the best way to manage those individual fisheries. And, but it comes down to, that there's a lot of bureaucracy there, but simply, educating anglers, encouraging good stewardship, doing, some, a little bit of education here and there, I think can, go a long way. And I think we're all moving away from, harvesting, but, there's some harvest is good. I could, I could give have a I could do a monologue for the entirety of this podcast on this stuff, but obviously I'm pretty passionate about this topic too, because as a guide, I like when maybe I'm lazy. I like when my job's easy and there's lots of fish, and I can just take people out there to whack fish. So maybe that's my bias, but
this seminar that's coming up, are you gonna by chance film it at all, or is it just going to be for the people at the Madison show?
I am planning on filming it. I do not have a time slot for it yet. I'm going to be encouraging people to show up. Again, like, I want it to be a conversation, so I'm going to try and be as brief and concise as I can, which probably from y'all listening, I'm probably maybe not the best at, but I will do my best to try and leave some time at the end, because I want it to be a conversation, because it needs to be it needs to be a conversation. And again, that's why I brought up the angling buzz and uncut angling kind of conversation, starting this conversation on YouTube with the barotrauma on crappie, because today I either let like 50 or 60 crappie go, or I massacred them. So, but that's, but that's, they all kick down and everything's fine. But, these are questions that, I think we all want, some solid answers to, or, just in that little realm of things. So it's gonna be good to that's another facet of what I want to bring to the table. It's I don't know, my YouTube channel. It's, I don't know. I like the kind of like the Joe Rogan model. Like, we're kind of having a Rogan-esque, kind of off the wall, anything goes kind of conversation. Because
that's
I
good
think
to have that.
Well, I think what I've taken away a little bit, because I find all this extremely fascinating, to be honest with you, because, obviously we spend 90% of our time targeting muskies. But like you said, I mean, which is a great point, is like over harvesting of the food chain, will have consequences that kind of work down the ladder, right? So if you're depleting a population of food for muskies, that'll eventually, negatively affect the fish that Gus and I typically chase. And so I think, you talking about how like there's these, I loved Aaron Weeb's video, and it's not because it was like an old gotcha thing. It's just more or less like, okay, we're just gonna add another viewpoint to the table here, and I think that that's extremely helpful, because I think with the amount of technology we do have at our disposal these days, it has kind of turned back on like the individual angler to really understand, and kind of, just like you were saying, learn about, what you're doing and all that, because it's just, you have all these tools at your disposal now that makes catching fish a little bit easier. Obviously, live sonar doesn't guarantee you putting a big limit of crappies, on the ice or in your boat. But it is a lot of technology right now that's, making things just a tad easier. And if you have that at your disposal, it is a little bit on your own onus to, look internally and make sure that you're doing probably what's best for the body of water that you like to fish. Gus, I don't know, do you have something to add there?
No, I mean, yeah, I definitely agree with you, Cletus and Max, talking about that. I did watch the uncut angling just this last night, which was pretty crazy. That we're not
I'm glad we're all on the
bringing
same
that
page for this conversation.
for sure. Yeah. And, speaking of like the Northwoods, one of the things you said was like, the bag limit of panfish. And like Max said, we don't really fish for panfish much. We do it in the winter a little bit, and that's pretty much about it. But it's a blessing and a curse for the amount of lakes we have here and the amount of diversity. And like you said, it doesn't matter about clarity, this, that, depth. It's like the size of the lakes. And, like you said, when it's hard to have a regulation of 25 limit panfish on a 60, 80, 100 acre lake. And, it could have the same amount of people take out the same amount of fish in that lake, and the next year that lake's going to be a little different than the 1,500 acre lake that's got probably a little more panfish in them. So, I mean, there's something to be said there. There's a lot of things, that we as anglers can do, and so can say the DNR, and going off that uncut angling video. There's definitely things that we both can do probably together,
and just like learn more. I think that's the biggest
learn more.
takeaway,
And yeah,
like,
and then also,
understand it better.
bringing it full circle back to like you and your YouTube channel, your background and your degree, the fact that you're fishing all the time, is that you will be bringing this education to everybody, not only as a guide, but just to public knowledge, whether it goes from just handling a fish better. I was kind of laughing at the Aaron Weeb video when he was talking about handling crappie, where he was talking about people like, don't be this dummy, taking all these pictures, and he's putting a clown photo over himself and like flashing text on there like, I was this idiot, I used to take all these photos. Like, don't be the person holding the muskie up for like a really long time, talking about it in the video, turning the video off, and then taking a whole bunch of video or pictures and then measuring it. It's just like, just make it a fluid motion. We're, like you said, we're probably one of the most conservation, heavy for people that musky fish.
Well, I mean, I think it's just the natural evolution of things to protect these bodies of water. I mean, like we've had people on, like we just had Greg Thomas on. He's talking about the first muskie he ever caught. He's swapping recipes with people on how to clean it and eat it. And, you listen to old podcasts of these guides way back in the day, and it's no fault on them. It's just, that was normal. They used to, take out a handgun and throw fucking 3 bullets in the head. And, like instead of having to, free spool them both side, they were like, enough of this shit.
That's when you know they're biting.
Yeah.
And and you can tell,
no,
you know,
you know they're biting because they're shooting, and you don't have to carry a big ass net in the boat because that thing is always in the way, man.
right. Well, you know, back in
Save
the
some
day,
space. Yeah. Oh yeah.
fishing out a little 14 and a half, 16 footers. And yeah, I mean, it's just, the game has changed. And I think with that, we as anglers probably just have to continue to evolve with it. So I enjoy having these conversations. Like I said, it's a little bit out of my comfort zone, but I think the more I'm able to hear guys like yourself talk, or videos like the Angling Buzz and Aaron Weebs, of the world putting out this information, I'll watch it. I will, digest it. I'll try to learn it better because, I'm, as someone still hanging on to my 20s, I want to continue to come up to, Vilas County and fish and have there be healthy populations of all fish. So I think it's all good stuff. Obviously I don't think we were planning on the podcast to go down the conservation route, but I'm damn glad it did, because it's an interesting topic for sure. And I can tell that you're very knowledgeable and passionate about it, which is great.
Yeah. And with the conversation comes the knowledge, and with the knowledge comes better care, and we can all do something better. I mean, because you can dive down the rabbit hole of, not just fish handling and making sure fish goes back, but encouraging, what genetics we want in our lakes, and all these, you could really go, pretty deep into, the what we could all do. But just to, kind of keep it simple, it's like, we've, and kind of like what Aaron was saying, it's like, we've all done that. We've all been there. We're not gonna, that's probably why some people are listening to this podcast, is because they're trying to become better musky anglers and trying to get some tidbits information. And I can guarantee, some of those people listening, we've all been there. We've all like pulled that first muskie, and we're holding it vertical, and we're like, look at this thing, and, not support the fish. And, we want to, take 20 pictures. I mean, and there's a time and a place for that, and it comes with, maturity. And, one of the things, I brought up, the whole Facebook group, they'll bite your head off. I mean, a few people saying that, might want to cradle the fish better, but, we all need to be part of the conversation and have a cordial conversation, not use it to frickin' kick you in the shin and tear you down because, whatever, my boss at work today gave me a hard time and I got some pent up aggression. So, but, but it really, it's kind of building the, not only the knowledge, but kind of the morality that we all hold as fishermen and, as stewards of the resource. Cause like you were saying, that's really what we're all here for. I mean, I can't wait to take my kids out and show my passion, that probably a long ways away yet, but I want that to be there. Like, today, I was, by myself, but it was like, I mean, I got the video. I mean, I'm talking conservation today. And I'm like, just the crappies. It's just like, I'm just like, it's not even funny. Just like plucking them out of the water, like run after another. And I want that to continue. And like, and I'm bringing up the conversation. If we're doing, if we're doing damage to the fishery by doing that, or are we doing something better? But anyways, not to, circle back around too hard, but
hey, real quick, just so I don't forget, because I don't mean to cut you off, but really quick.
No, please do.
You talked about different strains of these fish, and I kind of want to bring it back to the musky conversation, because this is something that I've been interested in. The state of Wisconsin has started to introduce some new musky strains. Do you know, outside of just like the Wisconsin or Chippewa River, strains, have you looked into that at all, on like, maybe how some Great Lakes spotted muskies would do in some of our deeper clear lakes, or anything of that nature? I mean, and it's okay if you have, I'm just curious.
I mean, that's I haven't done as deep a dive as I plan on doing, because that's gonna be one of the things that I want to talk about. I want to talk about in my seminar later this year, but because really what I'm interested as far as musky strains go is, kind of the really deep bodied fish. Like I've kind of more or less become pseudo obsessed. Like everybody wants a 50-incher. Like honestly, personally, I want to see 50-pounders again, and we got that kind of going on in Green Bay, but that used to be something that was viable up here in Vilas County. And I think a huge part of that reason why we don't see fish that quality more is because the genetics have been muddied. And to kind of talk about, shortcomings of, DNR, when DNR was restocking up here and kind of trying to rebuild the musky fishery up here, they were thinking about, let's just back up and take a look at it from an aquaculture perspective. When you're selecting for muskie that you want to stock, you want fish that are easy to raise in captivity, willing to eat whatever feed they're going to give them, and be able to raise a bunch of them and put them in the lakes, and now there's muskie again. So one of the things that I want to really look into and see if I can dig up is kind of where the DNR got a lot of their genetics from, stocking. Like what lakes did they do to, like, river systems? Because, up here, with the variety of lakes that we have, there's it's an excellent environment for kind of different substrains to stratify. And, you get, speciation events. Like, we have 2 different subspecies of lake trout up here, and they're just from 2 different lakes here in Vilas County. As far as like Great Lakes strains and stuff like that, looking at spotted muskie, one thing that, I want to kind of, what I would like to see is, like, I feel like, the leech lakers get, really big, really fast, but they get very long. You see a lot of those, those snakier fish. I mean, it's a 50, but, I've seen, there's some, don't get me that, there's some hog leechers. I mean, that one that came out of the Madison chain was a giant in anybody's book, but and that was big, heavy fish. But you see a lot of these leechers, they're long, they're skinny, and they're not living very long in relative terms. So, like, kind of the from a genetic standpoint, without getting into the specifics of the strains, because I don't have, I know there's the Minocqua strain, the chip leechers, Great Lakes strain fish, each of them having kind of individual qualities. But talking to somebody who used to be heavily involved in Bill's Muskie Club, and kind of when they were looking into the genetic side of things, and what hallmark of the new Great Lakes strain that they've declared that they've re-stratified is and that they're claiming we're going to get a world record from out of Green Bay, in the next 20 years. That it has, the qualities that you're looking for in a muskie that can get to these huge potential size. Why they're only allowing it to be stocked in the Great Lakes, I don't know. All of a sudden, the DNR has become concerned with genetics and preserving those genetics. That's why you're having resistance of stocking of walleye into some of these lakes and all this stuff, which is important. But people need to realize that the DNR has already messed a lot of this up. So we can have that argument with me at another time and place, listeners that disagree. But so, you need a muskie that has the genetic potential to grow to that size. It also needs to live long enough. And, well, those would be the big one, the big 2, it has to, and the third one would be the rate of growth. So you need those 2 things. The genetic potential and the rate of growth and longevity are kind of like the 3 factors.
And it needs to be a female to be the big one.
And it needs to be a girl. So,
a big old girl.
Hey, we live in Wisconsin. We got
like them big girls.
So if it's gonna happen anywhere, it's gonna happen here, son.
Right. No, that's interesting. The genetic standpoint, because us 3 talking right here, we're younger, so we don't have the elder standpoint here, or an elder DNR or an elder biologist or something. But we've, as everyone knows, there's the stocking reports on Wisconsin and Wisconsin strain, Chippewa strain, whatever strain. I mean, I've seen reports on some lakes up here, and they say unspecified So they'll say Wisconsin River strain, which I would assume is more of the Natum home range. And then I know there's I could be wrong, but I swear I've seen some lakes over here where they just randomly one year throw in some Chippewa strain, which maybe is because the hatchery had a problem and we had to get them from the other side of the state. And it's like, oh boy, we don't know what's gonna happen. One of those fish might grow big, but who knows? It might ruin the
Well,
genetics. It might make them amazing. It's
well,
almost why I don't know.
well, that's the thing is that all of our muskie are mutts. So in genetic recombination and in honesty, there's a chance. The good news is that in almost anywhere up here, in my opinion, there's a chance of being a really big fish. You know, luck of the spawn. A lot of things have to go right, but you might get a fish that, just by the luck of the draw, just happens to be, whatever, really, true chip dominant and has that potential, I guess Louis Spray's been debunked, but one of these huge, massive super tanker fish, but it has to survive that long, and their studies have shown, correct me if I'm wrong, somebody, but I think no matter, even if we handle the fish quick, dehook, quick picture, shoot her back down or slow release, however you think is best for releasing the fish, we're still killing 10% of the fish. They have to survive, other factors.
Stress of the fight, water temps.
Yeah.
Who
Yeah.
knows?
Yeah. A lot of things. So, but by becoming a bit more conscious of the genetics and kind of being, again, becoming more educated, demanding of the DNR that we want, certain genes to be in our lakes, because, I guess, in my point of view, like, we've already muddied the pot enough. So I think it's time. I think the DNR needs to realize that we should just be stewards of the garden at this point. And, instead of, it's too late in the game to be like, all right, we're only going to stock Great Lakes strain fish in lakes that connect to the Great Lakes. And we're just going to only this fish that we've bred with this genetic potential, even though it's supposedly a combination of leech, chip, Minocqua strain fish, as far as I understand it. I don't quote me on that, but they've tried to stratify this strain from the other strains, when really, as anglers, that's the other conversation we're having, is like, I want big fish. Like if we can, I don't know, breed, for lack of a better term, the super musky at this point. I would, kind of the ideal fish. Why aren't we stocking it in the more of, the lakes, and kind of developing something, working on a strain that will kind of produce more and more of an more average trophy sized fish up here, Gus.
I say this kind of. Oh, go ahead. Sorry,
Okay.
Gus.
Oh, you can go,
Yeah.
Max. You can go. I'll go next.
Oh, I was just gonna say, it's just real quick. I I kind of say this jokingly, but I try to keep a very optimistic outlook on the northern region of Wisconsin and the big fish potential, because we do hear all these folklores on people seeing, gigantic fish. Whether you hear about the guy who's at the bait shop and he, saw a muskie eat a full duck on the top of the water.
Goose. Remember that
read,
story?
Goose. Yeah. Full goose on the top of the water. Or you go on some forum and there's like a little, 150 acre lake in Vilas County. And there's a fish, nicknamed Grandpa, that people claim, that was probably north of 55 inches. Who knows if any of that stuff is real, but I kind of say it jokingly, is like, maybe there are some hidden giants up here in the northern part of Wisconsin that we just maybe have to be better in figuring out how to actually catch them. Because I do think there is some top end fish that live here, but I just think that they're extremely difficult to catch.
No, and I completely agree with that. I've I actually this year I got a pretty reliable report from somebody who has no reason to embellish to me about what they saw. And and the genetic potential, I might be kind of being snobby about that, but the genetic potential still exists here 100%, but it's just a matter of everything kind of going right. Those genes aren't totally gone. When I talk about breeding super musky and putting them in their lakes, I'm just asking, what I would like to see would be, something that's more, consistent, because if there's whatever, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say river genetics, because it seems like there's more and more of these really big fish are coming out of rivers in Wisconsin now, kind of whatever's, I don't know, causing, obviously there's a lot of factors that could be causing smaller average fish sizes, but the genetics can still produce giant fish up here. It's just a matter of the right time, place, moment, conditions, lifespan, luck. It's a life kind of story, if you will. So, I mean, the potential is still here. There's, I wouldn't be surprised if, a super tanker did come out of 100-acre lake that, has a small population, 4 or 5 fish in it, and somehow, whatever or mature fish, let's just put it that way, in it, and that have the rule of the roost, and that we're all overlooking, because, I, like Gus, and I'm sure you do, Max, looking at the stocking, looking at the stocking reports, we're going to go and we're going to look and see, all right, if a bunch of fish have been planted here consistently for so many years, and like circling back around to breaking down new water, guys coming up from other parts of the state to fish up here, that's going to bias us towards those lakes. So, and stories and everything. So, overlooked stuff is really where the hidden gems lie. I mean, you gotta bushwhack a little bit to find the really good stuff.
There's a few. I can't. Well, it's not like super common knowledge, but I guess I'll give this tidbit out to the folks. But I would say that my favorite lakes are the lakes that are least talked about. Is if you hear like nothing about a lake, or maybe somebody that might not exactly be a reliable source, and they bash it, or you never hear anything about that lake, that's the lake that you should go fish. 100%. Screw the stocking reports, screw the A class, B class. Who gives a shit? Go fish it. That's what I found out. And not many people, I don't know if anybody said that, but that is like a great tip, because we have so many damn lakes. And I mean, obviously there's good ones that are they're gonna be good forever. Yeah. I mean, we got the chain, shitload of fish. Not really gonna see that top end fish, but there's always gonna be a bunch in here. They're gonna stock it. There's gonna be tournaments here. But yeah, and going back to the genetics thing is something that we've seen up here. Is some of the biggest fish that we've caught, and some of the biggest fish that we've seen from certain lakes, they're some of the OG lakes that we hear about from the legends, like this and that caught this giant one here, there. It's like they got the genetics. It's like they're still there.
For whatever reason, that lake
it's fertile enough. It's got good bait. And that was another point I was going to bring up. There's so many like full circles we could do here. And I wish, well, I mean, as we continue to do this podcast and continue to fish for the years to come, I'm going to learn more. But I mean, I think it definitely can happen. The 50-pounder up here can happen again, for sure. No doubt. It's just the lakes are going to have like one of them. This isn't Mille Lacs. This isn't 100 and some 1,000-acre pond. I mean, we're talking all these lakes are 4,000 or less acres. There can only be so many. There can only be so much food. We can't, I mean, the fishing is going to be great up here. There's so many lakes to choose from, but we can't demand a lake to just have all of these mega super giants. It just, it physically can't take it, like this just can't happen.
No, 100%. It's there can only, at the top of the food chain, there can only be, so many top predators, certainly. And I mean, you have to almost kind of look at, Vilas, Oneida, Iron County as just a few different watersheds. We have some of the ingredients, the genetic potential is there. And also like when you have a high population of muskie in any given body of water, naturally you're going to diminish the average size. It's almost why, overstocking is another potential problem, because if you have too many, fish in the system, and honestly, a topic that I would almost broach is if we're potentially under harvesting muskie, since we're not taking anything out. Yes, we have mortality, but that could also I'm not saying we should all, start, harvesting the crap out of muskie. Don't get me wrong, anybody, before I screw somebody into the ceiling, but maybe limited harvest to kind of make room for that larger genetic potential is there. Again, kind of idea for people to look into for study is, what's the optimal population size for this lake? And I think the other fisheries biologists, people with the background are kind of probably pulling their hair out right now. But I will acknowledge that fisheries ecology, people think that rocket science is hard. Trying to model and understand fisheries and varying lakes and how many factors there are and unknowns that you simply cannot know, or are very hard to, I mean,
we don't swim, so we can't see what they're doing. I don't know who told me this, but it's a big difference from like deer. We got trail cams. We can see their footprints. Like these fish are in a different realm. It's why we don't know shit about the ocean. It's kind of almost the same deal.
Yeah, no, 100%. And, the fact that we have smaller unit size lakes, it certainly might make it a little bit easier in the ocean, but yeah, modeling aquatic modeling,
True, true.
yeah, but modeling smaller lakes might be a little bit more attainable. But as any fisherman knows, wind direction plays a huge part in how active a fishery is. And you'd have to maybe gather, maybe this lake, these fish are feeding or it's stirring up the nutrients when, there's a west wind on this given lake. And depending upon how much of a west wind you get in a year might, I don't know, increase the perch population. I'm just, spitballing here, but, there's so many factors that you have to, take into consideration to try and even get remotely close to what is, a broad answer, in statistics. I mean, you have a standard deviations of error. And I mean, that's always going to be in a marine ecology kind of setting. I mean, it's always, you could probably drive a bus through the frickin' standard, your standard error. But
I will say real quick that I do think Lake is about as confusing as the Atlantic Ocean. I just want to say that.
It's kind of almost like fishing in our own little inland ocean with all the diversity in there. But there's not too many muskie in there. I digress. I'm gonna start saying things that Gus should edit it out. That Gus should edit out.
What time are we at right now, Gus? You think recording wise?
Hour 45.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want to put some closing points on, and we'll just have to have Curtis. We'll just have to have you back on in the future. Maybe. Well, we're definitely gonna have you back on, but maybe we'll do some homework, or I'll, Gus and I'll do some homework next time we hop on, and maybe can have a pre kind of script a little bit on some of the things, because I think tonight's been awesome, and I'm excited to even listen back to it. I just it would be cool to do it all again with maybe even more of a set agenda and whatever.
Yeah.
But
continue this conversation. I mean, it would be cool if, since we're all kind of in the same little realm anyways up here in the Northwoods, to kind of continue this conversation and kind of take this as like as a point, maybe, an interim part of the show. Like, I'd be down to come on every so often and continue the conversation. And I think that would speak to kind of what we've kind of already talked about, is continuing the conversation. Cause, I mean, I have a lot of knowledge, but some things we're all kind of firing from the hip a little bit, but we can give back or continue to give to the viewers,
we can call it the classes. We can call it the classes with Cletus segment.
class with Cletus.
Yeah.
Classing with Cletus.
Classing with Cletus. But yeah. No, I think that would be awesome to kind of keep this ball rolling, and I'm really curious to see what kind of feedback we end up getting from this episode. And I think that people are gonna, I'd love to continue the conversation and keep it evolving, because we don't know it all, and
no, we want to learn.
We want to learn, and like I said, the conversation leads to more knowledge, and we can continue to kind of push the ball up the hill, so to speak.
Yeah, I definitely hope people respond to this this podcast and shout out, or not shout out, and shoot some messages over, and and so that we can learn more, because that would be great. But yeah, we're getting a little late here, so I think we'll wrap her up and put a big pin on this, and definitely come back and give some chats about this. And this was awesome. This was a great chat, Curtis. We're really, really happy to have you on, and really excited to have you on again, and also really excited to get back out fishing with you. I know we went out musky fishing that one time, and we also went on the ice one time. Wasn't super successful, but that's okay. That's how we learn. It's how we find new places. Oh, yeah. It's just how we grow as fishermen, and that's how it's gonna be. We touched on it a whole bunch, on new water and everything. Yeah, we talked about a lot in the short window.
Yeah. You learn. I almost learned more not catching fish than catching fish. So.
Yep.
Well, so if you're running trips this winter, and even I'm sure you're starting to open up your books for next spring and summer and fall, how can people get in touch with you to get out on a trip with you?
Yeah. So website www.foxvalleyoutdoors.com. Contact information, rates, and everything are available. Starting to do ice trips again. I should say we had a little interim there, got a little interruption from that warm weather and rain that we had in December, but trips are starting back up with one bright and early tomorrow morning. And as far as ice fishing goes, we're gonna be doing fishing up, Vilas County, March, April. Gonna be doing some perch stuff up on the Go. That's Go Gibbick. Pardon me for using this slang. And then books are open for the this spring and summer. Honestly, if you mention, I'm just gonna put this out there. You mentioned musky on tap, so you hear this on the podcast. If you're booking, if you get in the books before May, I'll give you $50 off your trip.
Oh, look at that!
And, so thanks again for having me on, guys. Hopefully that gives you guys a little bit of incentive, get you guys in the boat, and you can we can continue this conversation. Listeners, be happy to have you on board, and looking forward to continuing this conversation in the future, gentlemen.
Absolutely,
hell yeah,
man.
Keep the train going.
I'm excited to get out with you for sure. Next, maybe even this ice season, next summer. I know you guys had a blast. So yeah, like Gus said, can't thank you enough for coming on here tonight. Definitely enjoyed the direction that this conversation went. Yeah, best of luck with the ice season. Stay safe. I know you've been testing the fate a little bit out there, so I'm glad to see that the weather's getting a little colder for you dudes up in the northern region, and you'll be able to get out there sooner or later, hopefully with some machines as well to make the travels a little easier. But yeah, Gus,
Yeah,
I think we can put a bow on this one here.
For sure, for sure. And also you can follow Curtis. He's got the Catch 'em with Cletus YouTube and Instagram. Got all the socials, so be sure to give him a follow. That's how we found you.
Great
putting
follow.
out that content. Yep. Great follow. I think that was the first thing that Max said. He's like, dude, look at this Curtis guy. Great follow. He's a great follow. So that's awesome.
Always happy to entertain, gentlemen.
Good
Awesome.
stuff.
Well, we'll catch you later.
All right. Sounds good, guys. See you later.